Episode 223 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.info.
The FDH Lounge. You want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to FDH Lounge mini episode number 223. Rick Morris and Kyle Ross, your FDH Lounge dignitaries, breaking it down for you. We're doing another mini episode here by phone this week, which means that we are going to have way more games than we are going to have time available to discuss them. Let's take a look at last week, how we did. I was 9-7 on the overall slate of games, 1-2 on my big three, 0-1, unfortunately, on my lock. For the year, 106, 99, and 3 on the full slate of games, 21, 20, and 1 on my big three. Now down to 7-7 on my locks for the year, which means, if past history is any indication, it's time to really, really jump on board my plays as I give the convenient explanation of that. Kyle, after last week's 1-2, a sterling 31, 21, and 1 for the season, 60% verified, which Kyle, as a long-time on-the-record Vegas industry handicapper, knows is important to have. We welcome him in at this time. Kyle Ross, ladies and gentlemen. How you doing, my friend?
You know, Ricky, thanks for having me. And I will say, though, that record, it seems like it's kind of gradually come down for me each and every week the last couple of weeks, which is interesting because, maybe in the spirit of the season that this is, I'm making my list and I'm checking it twice here. If you remember, first week of when we started doing this, it may have even been that when we did the division-by-division previews, where we gave away our Super Bowl picks and stuff like that. I said, at some point I reserve the right to change everything here because we've seen in previous years, whether it was the Giants last year, who at this point, by the way, we're 7-7, and most people don't even think they make the playoffs. You had the Packers the year before that, and I think it was the Steelers the year before that. We've just seen one team kind of play 500 ball through the first 13, 14 weeks. Well, to be 500 has to be an even number of weeks, but still. And then they just get red hot and win the whole thing. So with that in mind, at this point in the season, I think I've reached the point where I'm making major changes. But it's interesting that with some of my individual games this week, remember, as far as week-to-week betting goes, I'm going to be doubling back on some teams that, I otherwise may be ready to give up on long-term, if that made any sense.
No, I understand it completely because it is a thing where you do have to differentiate between what you think in a given week and what you think for the course of the rest of the season. We always touch very, very lightly on the Thursday night games just because, again, typically we don't have this up on the blog in time for people to check out our picks on it anyways, and they're reduced to going to Twitter to find out what the play is. So telling everyone what they're finding at Twitter here. Cincinnati is at Philadelphia, and what a role reversal these teams have had during the course of this season as far as expectations, especially a couple weeks into the season here. Cincinnati started off laying 3 on the road. They're laying 4.5. That keeps going up and up and up. Notwithstanding that, I'm still on Cincinnati. I think people are maybe going to give a little bit too much of a benefit of the doubt to Philadelphia coming off last week. An impressive win over Tampa, but not a sign at all as well in Philly.
Well, a couple things here, Ricky, but just to my earlier point before I hit this game, and by the way, I do agree with you on this game. This game would have been one of I have 5 recommended plays this week. This would have made it 6 had it not been the Thursday game and a road favorite. Thursday night road teams, notwithstanding what we saw last week with Denver, not my favorite bet ever on the board, certainly, the short week. But I think in this case it will work in favor of Cincinnati, who, is off, quite frankly, a brutal loss to Dallas, another NFC East team last week, a game they should have had, settled for a lot of field goals. Philadelphia is in an interesting spot here. You mentioned the win they're off of last week against Tampa Bay. Do you know that their 4 wins have been by a combined 6 points this year, the Eagles?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember way back when you were spot on. You called this at the time the worst 3-1 team in the history of the league. I kind of laughed, but you might have been onto something there. And it's interesting, not only are they off the rare win, they're first in 9 weeks, but next week they have what is likely to be the coup de grace of the Andy Reid era, his final home game against Washington, no less, a division opponent. So Cincinnati just needs this one so much. I would certainly recommend them. It is concerning that the number's already going up, and it's not even game day. We obviously are recording this on Wednesday. And by the way, I just wanted to say, I kind of got off track there when I started thinking about the game, and I wanted to finish some opening thoughts, Ricky. A couple things I wanted to say.
Sure.
Just to things, you mentioned what role reversals these two teams have had, and I think I can segue back into where I wanted to go. I hate people that hold you to things you said 3 months ago. You said Chicago's were the best back then, and they make fun of you. Well, a lot of things can change, in 3 months' time. I mean, there's injuries. I mean, just look at these two teams. Now, Cincinnati's a team, quite frankly, that is going to, I think, finish just short of the playoffs, which is where I think you and I both thought they would be before the year, if I remember. I think we both had them in that 8-8, 9-7 range, just missing out. But Philadelphia, I mean, they're going to be one of my biggest misfires the entire year. I mean, I'm not afraid to say I had them winning the NFC before the year. Andy Reid had never missed the playoffs in back-to-back seasons in his career. But he's always had a lot of personal and professional problems this year, and you can't always foresee those things. So, and another thing, Rick, I know how much you love political correctness. I would be remiss if I did not would be the first to wish you a happy holidays and a Merry Xmas. Thank you very much.
I know that's what you're wishing all your secular friends this time of year. Thank you very much. Yes. Well, this next one here, I know that from finding out from you off air what your big picks are, starting with the slate here, this turns out to be one of your 5 aforementioned plays. As it is the Packers at the Bears, the great rivalries in the history of the league here. Packers laying 3 on the road, started off with 1 at the beginning of the week. Again, don't like where the line movement's going, and it's a thing where certainly you expect a bounce-back game for the Bears off of what they did shockingly against Minnesota last week, where they let me down on one of my picks. I think that was my lock pick, actually. Having said all of that, this is where I always think you have to look at the specific circumstances of a game. You got Jay Cutler. Looks like he's going to be good to go, but he's a little bit banged up physically here. That defense hasn't been so great recently. The Packers have pretty much pwned the Bears the last couple of years here. So in a game that at first glance would have me going towards the Bears, I'm actually going to go the other way. I think the Pack clinches the division here. Take the Pack, lay the 3 on the road is my pick.
Okay, now anyone who has been following my picks this year, and then you so eloquently pointed out that this will be one of my big picks, knows which way I'm going to go, given the way the matchup. You got a home dog. I picked the Bears before the year to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. I'm off that ship. I am officially, I'll be the first. Sometimes you always kick yourself if you jump off a ship too soon. I tried to hold on. Look, the Bears had only lost to good teams, but then you mentioned what a brutal loss last week at Minnesota. I know Cutler got hurt, but they were getting worked early in that game. It's really interesting, and this game really fits my model of what I said at the top, where I'm jumping off the Bears ship long term, but short term they need this game about as badly as any team needs to win this week. I know Cincinnati, we just talked about how much they need to win, but the Bears, if they lose this game, they'd be in trouble of maybe missing the playoffs with the way some of these teams are coming on in the NFC. I know your reference on the Packers have owned the Bears. Since McCarthy came aboard, they've essentially owned the division. It's interesting they don't have that many division titles, at least in the last couple of years. They won it last year, obviously, 15-1, but they've owned the Bears, and they're hot coming in. They've won 7 of 8, and they made the Bears look pretty silly on that Thursday night game in Week 2. I just think all the momentum points to the Packers. I just think this is one of those situations where this given week, Soldier Field, have to win. You got to take the home dog Bears here. As a home dog, especially the way the numbers when we get full field goal here. I like the Bears. This is my first of 5 recommended plays this week. just go against all the momentum. I know it doesn't make much sense. I know I just said to jump off the Bears. But these teams are pretty similar, in my opinion. Green Bay's certainly a little better at the quarterback position, but you have two terrible offensive lines. I'd be interested to hear what you had to say, Ricky. I don't think either of these teams, because I know Green Bay was your pick to win the NFC, make that much noise in the playoffs. I really don't. One of them will win a game, but I see better teams in the NFC than these two right now. I really do.
I still think the Packers could make and win the Super Bowl, potentially. I don't. Okay. The Bears, I think I picked them to be a wild card originally. I'll stick by that. And I don't even think they need to win this game for that to happen. They got Arizona and Detroit coming up the last 2 weeks.
Yeah,
I think the Bears.
Two road games, though, and you're right. They should win this. But it's interesting. Even if the Bears win it, they may not take the division because that loss to Minnesota will hurt them in the tiebreakers because I believe Green Bay hasn't lost a division game.
Right.
So Chicago will have one more division loss. But Green Bay is just so unique to me in that you have easily one of the two best quarterbacks in the league. Some would argue one, let's just say 1A, 1B with Brady, operating behind arguably the worst offensive line outside of Philadelphia.
That's true. That's absolutely true. By the way, and this should be an incredible game. No surprise, it's the A game on Fox. Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, and the unbelievable Pam Oliver on the sidelines. And by the way, Twitterati, lay off of her alleged weave. Pam Oliver, she fine. Let's just leave it at that. Next up here, it should be another great game. The Giants at the Falcons. This one, a rematch. You talk about playoffs from last year in the playoffs where the Falcons, who I've really been on the last couple of years, admittedly did lay an egg there. Atlanta went from a pick-em earlier in the week to now they're laying 1.5. So the money seems to be going in their direction, certainly, and it looks like dumb money, which always has to give you pause.
No, it was pretty early. That was pretty early, that jump.
Oh, that was early. Okay, well,
it was pretty early a jump.
That makes me feel better about where I'm going to go. And actually, you know what? And this just shows that I guess I'm not paying sufficient attention to what I'm doing here. This is what I get a little flustered trying to keep us on pace here with our 45-minute time limit. I guess I skipped over. This is one of my big three. So I'm going to go with Atlanta in this one, in this spot, simply based on how the Falcons play at home, how the Giants play on the road. It's hard to look at how they both played last week and see momentum going in favor of the outcome that I'm looking at here. But I think for the Falcons, I think home is destiny in this game here. They will win, and they will stay right there in the mix for the number one seed in the NFC.
Every negative thing that has ever been written about the Atlanta Falcons was proven true last week, Rick Morris. Your Atlanta Falcons, I might add. You might as well have, I mean, look, I have called this team the pavement of the NFL, be guided by voices of the NFL. Those are two, sort of pseudo-famous critics fans from the 1990s, for those of you who are not following and maybe tuning into this show for the first time. I've said it all year. And they didn't just lose to Carolina. Look, I know you liked Carolina. They were one of my big three. That was my favorite pick. I was actually reading an article in the New York Times. There a lot of people were shocked. There was some blogger, I can't remember, that really liked the Panthers, and people were emailing into the paper thinking there was some mistake with some probability models, but whatever. They didn't just lose that game last week. I watched a great deal of it. They were dominated badly in that game. They had the ball for like 6 minutes in the first half. And, obviously they were in a natural letdown spot. They had just avenged their only loss of the season in a major national TV home game against New Orleans Saints, so it's a natural letdown the following week. I'm telling you, though, man, there is no way in heck I'm taking this team come playoff time. There's going to be a ton of pressure on them against a good team in that first home game because they're still going to get home field in the NFC. But we've seen this act before, and that all being said, this is one of my big five. I'm going with the Falcons. If they lose this game, honestly, Ricky, they shouldn't be allowed to make the playoffs.
I would agree with that.
The Falcons, you defend them, but if they lose this game, it's just going to be annoying to have them as the top seed. It's just because here's the thing: the Giants are a team potentially, because I think the NFC East winner will be the 4 seed, that they could run into again in the divisional run. Who's going to bet the Falcons when they're off their bye that week? I mean, they're going to take there's a few teams, they could be maybe one of the two teams we just talked about, Green Bay or Chicago. I just think no way am I backing the Falcons come playoff time, but this is a regular season when they excel. They have to have this game. I think two weeks will be high on the Giants because the road record and what they did to a terrible Saints secondary last week. So give me the Falcons as my second recommended play of the week.
Okay, and I see
By
that.
the way, the Giants as much respect as I have for the Giants, they could blow this because their schedule is much harder than the Redskins, who I think we're going to talk about in a minute. They may not make the playoffs. You heard it here first.
Wow. By the way, this being another huge game, Fox has got a bunch of them this week. My boy, three-time lounge guest Kenny Albert on the call, along with Daryl Johnston and the shoulder breaker Tony Siragusa in this one here. And if you're saying that Atlanta is the pavement of the NFL, I guess that would make the Giants the Nelson of the NFL. Not a critic's choice, Kyle, but they just keep getting the job done. What can you say?
Well, they got it done twice, like Nelson. I guess there's love and affection, and after the rain, I don't think they've done anything else other than that. So.
I can hardly wait for the Giants in the playoffs. We could do that all day.
Good God. Good God, you ought to be sent away for a long time.
My love of old school hair metal will never get old.
Oh boy!
Next up here in the NFC South, it's the 6 and 7 Bucks at the 5 and 8 Saints. Tom Brenneman, Brian Gullick, and the lovely team Laura Oakman on the call for this one here. New Orleans is laying 3.5. It's up from 3 earlier in the week. Feels like a spot for the Saints. At this point in time, hard to believe they're both on, prolonged losing streaks of a couple of weeks here. It doesn't really feel like it in either case, the way that the Saints came back from earlier in the year and with the kind of year that the Bucks have had. But each of them's lost the last 3 games, so somebody's going to have 4 losses in a row. I think going into this one, home game here, Saints now have it in their crosshairs. They got a chance to get to 8 and 8 in what has been a horrible lost season. They're going to be on an upswing emotionally based on winning the Tagliabue appeal. So I'm going to go with the Saints in this one, with laying the 3.5 to cover on Tampa.
The hook scares me. My initial thought was to back the Saints because they're back at home, and they really have improved after that start. You and I were the first to say it. We called for the Saints to miss the playoffs this year. We didn't really have any, we obviously were citing the whole bounty situation, how that would cripple the team. We couldn't really offer any week-to-week stuff. We just said stuff's going to happen, and they're going to have a worse record than you think, and that's what's happened, basically. Tampa Bay has surprised me. They've come back down to earth, and I think some people are going to be quick to say, oh, well, they need this game. They're still alive somewhat. What's Tampa Bay? They're 6 and 7, right? Tampa Bay?
Yeah.
If they win, but even a win, I think that they're kind of out of it to be with that loss to Philadelphia. Even if they run the table, they're 9 and 7. I don't think that makes it the NFC. So I think the whole, Tampa Bay is a team in a playoff race, I don't think that holds that much water. The hook does scare me, so I'll stay away. If you force me, though, I would probably agree with you a little bit going to New Orleans. I know that they struggled early in the year, but always a tough out at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome.
They certainly are, and you always get the sponsor plug in there. Well played. The next one here, I got to tell you, what strikes me about this game, the 7 and 6 Vikings at the 6-6-1 Rams. The excitable Gus Johnson, along with Charles Davis, Christina Pink on the call on Fox. What gets me about this game, you look at the records of these teams, and this is where Andy Reid should be fired, Norv Turner should be fired. All these underachieving teams out there, somehow you have these two teams collectively combined over 500 with the talent on their rosters at this point in time. I'm looking at this here, and again, the Rams, I picked against them reluctantly last week. They're laying 3 here at home against Minnesota. 2 dome teams going at it, so it's not like anybody in the month of December is going to be much thrown by this. They're both dealing with the same set of circumstances as they normally would if they were at home, either team. Just in looking at this, again, I'm more impressed with where St. Louis is going. I think their offense is a little bit more balanced right now than Minnesota's is. My boy AP, who's just killing it for my one fantasy team here, he's pretty much the entirety of the Minnesota offense at this point in time. Jeff Fisher's got this defense keyed up pretty darn good. Because of the balance question on that, I'm going to say and because I think they're a more legit team all around, I'm going to say take the Rams, lay the 3 at home.
I was going to ask you kind of a rhetorical question, but the answer is obviously Adrian Peterson, but still, how are the Vikings 7-6? Christian Ponder is terrible.
AP smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, I mean, Christian Ponder is terrible.
Yeah.
And because they're a half game better, and I have no belief that the Minnesota Vikings will make the playoffs, my natural inclination would be to back the Rams as well. I'm not interested in the Rams as a favorite, though, even at home. The Rams got me last week against the Bills. I thought that was going to be a tricky spot for them, coming off the upset of the Niners, going to the cold weather of Buffalo, a desperate Bills team that has just continued to lay egg after egg this year. But they pulled it out at the end. But it was that ugly kind of win. You know, it's funny, it used to be the NFC Central, now kind of the North, it's known with the teams. That was the old black and blue division in the sport. But, now that's kind of a passing division. The NFC West is sort of the new black and blue division, I think. Minnesota's kind of the one exception, I guess, to that rule, that they still like to run it. The other three teams just want to chuck it 50 times. But the Rams, I'm sitting this one out just because I like the Rams more. I like what Jeff Fisher's doing. I thought they'd be a 6 or 7 win team before the year. Minnesota, I did not, in full candor. So I slightly like the Rams, but not enough to lay the 3.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, even though the 3 only reflects the fact that they're at home, but yeah, I get where you're coming on that.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, but even that, I just the Rams are one of those teams. I just
sure.
They've strung a few wins together. I'm much more confident in that, even though I went against them last week as an underdog. I'd be much more confident taking St. Louis as an underdog than laying points to them. I'm not sure they're at that level yet where they, even just getting a token 3 for home field advantage, need to be laying points. This team got clobbered by the Jets at home a few weeks ago, for crying out loud.
And in the next one here, we're actually looking at 2 teams, where they're playing a game where the 3 points is not going to come into play. Because it's a pick'em. It is the Redskins at the Browns, a pick'em this week. Ron Pitts, Mike Martz, Chris Devoto with the call on Fox. A battle of the vaunted rookie quarterbacks in this one. And, of course, by that we mean Brandon Wooten and Kirk Cousins at RG3 is likely to probably be on the sidelines for this one here.
Well, you know what, Ricky, I got some breaking info. Not to jump over you, talk over you.
No, go ahead.
RG3 about an hour ago said chances are very good that he's going to play.
Okay, all right. Well, that actually doesn't change my thoughts on the game at all here. The one thing I will say, this is a thing that is very, very unusual. Urge everybody to go check out at the FDH Lounge Multimedia Magazine, the same place you can find this show, by the way, the FDHLounge.blogspot.com. Latest power rankings, I've been putting them up week by week for the season. This year I've been tracking them for the course of the entire season. You can see the roller coaster of where I had every team every week and kind of trace it through. The Browns are the only team in the league that has done nothing but go up in my power rankings. Now, that's because I had them at 32 for a long time, but 32 to 31 to whatever. I got them at 21 now. I mean, this run that they're on at this point in time, they're a team that you don't want to face at this point because of the job that Dick Duran has done with this young, aggressive defense. Having said all of that, again, they feel like a sell-high kind of a situation in this circumstance against the Redskins, who are a legitimate playoff contender. With Cousins, with Griffin, it matters not. I say take the Redskins on the road, no points involved.
I kind of do too, but I'm just scared because the Redskins, I mean, I don't know if you got a chance. I got the privilege of watching the 1 o'clock games last week via Red Zone, and they spent a good deal of time on the closing minutes of Washington-Baltimore. What a fantastic game. I know you hate statements like this, but it's a good thing that football is back in Washington, the nation's capital. I know you hate comments like that because the kind of networks that like to say them, but also that stadium was rocking, and the Redskins have been so painfully mediocre for a while, and you forget that this used to be one of the most storied franchises in the league in the 70s and 80s. They really haven't done anything in the last 20 years. Cleveland does feel like a team you need to sell high on. It's going to be interesting. And obviously we have a little more interest than, the majority of people listening to this, around the country and possibly even around the world with the Browns coaching situation with us both being in Cleveland. I thought last week was for Shermer's job, and they did a great job. I was shocked. The Browns have not won by that many points in a long, long time. Now, Kansas City's horrible, but still doesn't stop me from taking them. God, what was I thinking earlier in the year with the Chiefs? But here's the thing. They feel like the team, they're 5 wins, the Browns, Oakland, Kansas City, Pittsburgh with a third-string quarterback that turned it over 8 times, San Diego by 1. And then they did have a nice showing against Cincinnati earlier in the year that I was on. But, let's kind of temper the praise a little bit. And Shermer may not be off the hot seat yet if they lose these last 3 games. Potentially, if there's any merit to these Nick Saban rumors, I don't think you should dump Shermer for another career assistant. But I would dump him in favor of Saban. Now, I know that's a different podcast for a different time. Nick Saban was not as bad as I know you probably want to make him out. He's a 500 coach that got screwed over by a front office that didn't kind of want Drew Brees and went with Dante Culpepper instead.
I actually agree with that. I don't think he was horrible in Miami. Not great, but horrible.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't win 12 games, but then he doesn't play Louisiana Monroe, okay?
Right.
So, but in this case, Washington, we've talked about all year, and again, our time's limited this week, so I can't go into this as much as I want to. Washington, all year we've talked about the turnover rate among playoff teams is going to be the lowest it's ever been, potentially, since the current format's been enacted 20 years ago. We're looking at not possible 9 repeat entrants. Washington is a team who could get that thing back down to the Mendoza line of 8. It's never been more than 8 returnees ever since they did the current format. If they can unseat the Giants in the East, that's the only place that can change. I think Washington possibly wins out if they can get by this tricky spot with a less than 100% RG3 and possibly takes the NFC East.
That really would be something. That would be an unbelievable story. Yeah, the networks.
They got Philly and Dallas. Philly, look, I know it's Reed's swan song. There will be some emotion. They should be able to win that game. And then Dallas, who could be
We'll be getting Kyle back on here in a momento. Again, our next game that we're going to be looking at here involves Jacksonville and Miami. And Kyle is back. Welcome back, Kyle.
Sorry, I got so excited talking about the Dallas Cowboys that I hung up the phone accidentally on you there. So, no, I'm just
okay.
Who would bet on the Cowboys? In the last week of the year, it's going to be Dallas and Washington. I think it might be potentially a Sunday night game, if I remember correctly. Who would bet on the Cowboys in a big game? So I'm telling you, the Redskins could potentially, if they get by this week, I think this is their hardest game of the remaining 3. If they win here, I think there's a great chance they run the table and take the division. Because the Giants have 2 brutal games coming up at Atlanta, at Baltimore, 2 of the toughest places to play. They could lose both.
They very well could.
The Redskins have the tiebreaker, so.
Right. Next up, the Battle of East Florida, the 2-11 Jaguars at the 5-11 Dolphins. Marv Albert, Rich Gannon on the call on CBS. The Dolphins are laying 7 in this week and have been pretty much consistently through the week. Two putrid teams. My Dolphins not even as good as their record, I think you'd have to say, in looking at this. I don't have much here for an explanation except that 7 seems a bit much. I could see this being a dumbed-down 13-7 kind of a game. Yeah. I don't see the Jags winning, but I don't see the Dolphins covering the 7, certainly.
Yeah, I'm the same way, Ricky. Before the year, I said Miami would get to at least 6 wins. This would be their 6th win. So I see them winning the game, but I could certainly make a compelling case to take the points for Jacksonville. Last time we saw Miami in this price range, they went out and all they did was suffer their worst home loss in 50 years to Tennessee, 37-3. It might have been their worst home loss ever. Jacksonville's going to play better than the Dolphins over the last month, too, with the immortal Chad Henne under center. So I could make a compelling case for Jacksonville, but I don't take Jacksonville. So not a recommendation, but I'd agree with you kind of that Miami probably wins but doesn't cover.
Okay. All right. And somehow or other, I seem to have done an even more putrid job than the last time we were on the phone of keeping us paced here. So we got a lot to get through.
Yeah, I noticed that. I noticed that. It's my fault. I don't shut up ever. So
no, that's fine. It's up to me to keep it going, and I'm failing somehow and making it worse as I explain it. Denver laying 3 on the road at Baltimore. They've been laying 3 pretty much consistently through the week here. This is a spot where, again, you talk about when to buy, when to sell. This feels like a sell opportunity on Denver with the way that they're going at this point. And looking at the teams that they've beaten. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at who they've beaten through the course of attaining 10 wins. It's not Murderers Row. This will be their biggest that they've had this season. Maybe you could say week 1 versus Pittsburgh here, but I'm saying take Baltimore getting the 3 at home.
This is my 3rd recommended pick of the week. Baltimore is a home dog. Are you kidding me? Look, I've all year, particularly last month, have called the Ravens the most overrated team in the league. I'll stand by that. I don't even think they're going to win a playoff game. But unless they draw Indianapolis in the wild card round, then they probably will. But give me them as a home dog. This is a tipping point kind of game. Everyone's down on the Ravens now, and everyone wants to kneel at the altar of Manning. But you're right, they haven't beaten anyone, and they're kind of just due for a loss. So Baltimore, I mean, they've won like 80% of their home games under John Harbaugh. Give me them as a home dog. Love Baltimore.
You got to like that.
It's just like the Chicago game. Just like the Chicago game, long-term, not a buyer on the home dog here, but this week, yes.
But you're citing a long-term trend that I'm also going to bring into play in the next game here, too, which is very interesting as we segue. The 4-9 Panthers at the 5-8 Chargers, two horrible underachievers, Sam Rosen, Heath Evans, Joel Savage on the call on Fox. Here's what I'm looking at in this game. San Diego's laying 3, have been pretty much consistently through the week. San Diego, you started to see it last week, one of these patented fool's gold runs late in the year. This time it won't be enough to save old Norvell Turner, but I feel like they're in the middle of another one of these ones so that they can finish more respectable with a record than basically what they really deserve. I say take the Chargers in this one. They're on that fake roll, laying the 3, and they're going to cover it, I think.
Well, yeah, I know you liked San Diego a lot more than I did before the year. I liked Carolina a lot more than you did. I would be naturally inclined to back the dog, but I'm staying away here because both teams in potential letdowns. Carolina, I saw that one coming. I had it last week over Atlanta. I don't think anyone had, including Philip Rivers' mother, had San Diego doing what they did to Pittsburgh last week. Possibly the most shocking upset of the week, of the year, I would say. Forget the week. It was certainly the week, possibly. When I texted a Steelers fan, one of my good friends, Josh, right before when they announced that 3 offensive linemen for the Chargers were out, I'm like, oh, Steelers win big today. What happened there? Oh, boy. Stay away from this. 2 teams in off letdown spots that are poorly coached, by the way, too. Both teams poorly coached.
Yeah. We've talked about that with both of these teams through the year. Your Image Records here, 8-5 Seahawks at the 5-8 Bills at them at the Rogers Center in Toronto, that is, albeit all indications are it's going to be a pretty hyped crowd with all the hockey fans, having no place to go. They've apparently slashed the ticket prices, so they may be able to replicate the feel of a home game for the Bills somewhat, and that is something that I'm looking at in this game. Seattle's laying 5.5. It started at 4 earlier in the week. I have no doubt in my mind, I would bet the mortgage on Seattle to win the game. Buffalo is one of these annoying penis-punching kind of a teams that's just gonna they're gonna sneak in and cover. I can feel if they're gonna cover the 5.5, they can't win the game.
Yeah, this tricky spot for the Seahawks, and I'm going to try to blow through this as quick as possible, Ricky. Feel free to cut me off when you need to. There is a stock I'm buying in Seattle right now, and it ain't Starbucks. It is the Seahawks team. Every year, I mentioned at the top, there's a team that's kind of basically 500 through the first 3 quarters of the year. They get hot, and at the end, they're hoisting up the Vince Lombardi Trophy. This year's candidate is the Seattle Seahawks. I am recommending, they just legalized marijuana up there in Washington, so all you stoners may need to put that next 8 on layaway, because I'm recommending $50 on Seattle at 20-1 to take the Super Bowl. I placed it myself 2 days ago. It's a great wager. Now, all that being said, the Seattle to Toronto red-eye, not one of the NFL's more famed flights. This is a potential tricky spot for them. I don't like them laying points at all in an unfamiliar surrounding. I think they're going to win, and I do see them, like a Washington, by the way, potentially winning out and surprisingly taking the division. In Seattle's case, that would earn them a first-round bye.
Well, you kind of stole my thunder as far as the joke I was going to make. With your extreme enthusiasm for Seattle in this game, I was going to say, in the parlance of today's Seattle, it sounds like somebody's off their tolerance break talking about the Seattle Seahawks right about now. But you kind of stole my thunder with your joke on that.
I'm telling you right now, Seahawks. 20 years after COVID, 20 years after veteran Cobain put the city on the map, I think Russell Wilson and Coach him up Pete have him singing "I'm Still Alive" one more time, baby. Seahawks. Seahawks.
And don't forget the band that was briefly named Mookie Blaylock.
Yes,
the next
Mookie
game
Blaylock, yes.
The 4-9 Yes, the 4-9 Lions at the 4-9 Cardinals. Chris Myers, Tim Ryan, Jamie Maggio are unfortunate enough to see and call this game. Detroit laying 6.5 on the road against Arizona. It had been 6 earlier in the week. Again, road favorite Ricky strikes again. I went with Arizona to backdoor against Seattle last week. No more. This is a putrid offense, 9-game losing streak. 6.5 ain't enough against an offense like Detroit. They can't keep up. Detroit will stomp. Never mind the 6.5. They'll roll by more than that.
I can't make a case for either of these teams. No thank you, no way, no how am I touching either of these teams this week. I will say this. Arizona, before the year, I ripped on your boy, Coach Wiz. I said this was a 5-win team. They started 4-0. I was real sheepish. I hope you would be kind and never bring that up the rest of the year. You have been kind enough, but I'll say so. I'm going to return something, the favor here for you, Ricky. You're talking about Jim Schwartz, Ken Wisenhunt here. I think most people would agree that there is a coach who is certainly on the hot seat, possibly could be fired at the end of the year, and I would agree with that, but it clearly should be Jim Schwartz. Given the talent he has compared to Wisenhunt, look, that was an awful loss last week. It can ruin a career, but he has no quarterback. He has terrible ownership. Jim Schwartz, I said it week 1, I said it week 4, week 7, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Jim Schwartz stinks. I would just like to say that for the record again.
All right. We've gotten that hint from you over the course of the season. An AFC West battle between two, I was going to say Titans, but I can't even say that with a straight face. The 2-11 Chiefs at the 3-10 Raiders. We shouldn't probably have to go too much into this one. Raiders laying 3, had been 1 earlier in the week. I hate to chase the mouth breather money in this one as the line has gone up like that. But, again, Kansas City gave a true accounting of what they're all about last week. I'm going to take Oaktown to cover the 3 at home.
Ricky, I know I promised I would, but I didn't. I went for it. My jog took a little bit longer, and I got caught doing something else. Are these the bottom 2 teams in your power rankings?
They are not. I do have Jayville down there as well.
Oh, really? These are my bottom 2. I have Kansas City last and Oakland second to last. Just like the last game, I wouldn't bet this game with your money. Are you kidding me? These teams are awful. Right. I mean, they are awful. Kansas City, when Kansas City falls down, I mean, not literally, but when they, are be trailing by more than 1 score in a game, they have no chance. Brady Quinn is awful. And Carson Palmer, by the way, that was one of the worst trades in NFL history. I mean, Cincinnati, it wasn't quite, getting 82 draft picks or whatever it was for Herschel Walker, but it's close, man. Cincinnati is getting just ripped Oakland off, but good in that deal.
That was truly, truly bad. What will be truly epic Sunday night, another great primetime game here. The 9-3-1 49ers at the 10-3 Patriots at Gillette Stadium in Foxborough. Al Michaels, Chris Collinsworth, Michelle Tafoya on the call for this one, the Sunday night game of the week. Pats are laying 5.5, had been 3 earlier in the week. The only thing I can say about this, and again, I know your theory on time zones and whatnot, but the 5.5 seems a little inflated. It seems like everybody's maybe a little bit too in love after what the Patriots did to Houston last week here. The 49ers with a gutty effort after starting out not so strong against Miami. I do like San Francisco to cover the 5.5, and again, it wouldn't slay me altogether if they won this one outright.
First of all, Ricky, let me tell you this, and it stinks because we tape the show kind of, always Wednesday or Thursday, and then, things can always transpire in the 48 to 72 hours before most of these games kick off. Let me tell you something. Monday morning, all of the handicappers seem to collectively wake up and decide that New England was going to kill Houston, and they were absolutely right. I talked to a lot of people. That was one of those cases where all the handicappers agree, and it actually, usually when that happens, I get a little scared when all the handicappers are going the same way. But in this case, it was totally justified. I've had this team, New England is the best team in the league in my power rankings for more than a month now. Their 3 losses are by 4 points. In many ways, they were the anti-Eagles early in the year. But it's funny you talk about the time change. That's always kind of nullified by the night game. Now, so I just disagree. The line move has been too much. Too many people, and I agree that New England's the better team. Belichick is just almost unbeatable at home in December. New England's going to win but close win. Here's what makes it tough to back San Francisco here. They have the huge game next week against Seattle, also a Sunday night game now. It's been flexed into that spot. So if that wasn't the case, I'd like the Niners even more. But in this case, I think Patriots close.
Yeah. And the precedent here, the Sunday night game earlier in the season, Belichick against the other Harbaugh brother, it was a 1-point game. Could happen again here. Wouldn't shock me if that were the case.
Mm-hmm.
We can probably blow through this next one before we get to the rest of the locks. 6-7 Jets at the 4-9 Titans, the putrid Monday night matchup that Tirico Gruden and Lisa Salters will be on the call for. Tennessee's laying 1.5, had been 1 earlier in the week. This is just a matter of who do you think stinks less, more or less, under the circumstances. I'll go with the Jets. I think the Titans are even more likely to let you down in a given scenario even than the Jets are right now. Jets can win this one on the road. It's going to be real fugly, like 13-9 or whatever. But I do like the Jets to cover, especially the dog.
Like every Jets game. Well, that's like every Jets game recently. I'll tell you what. This is actually the 4th of my 5 recommended plays this week, believe it or not. You talk about getting to the locks. This is number 4 or 5 for me. So I'm going Tennessee. All this talk of the Jets, 6-7 playoff chances, give me a break. Wouldn't it be just so New York Jets for them to step on the national stage against a sub-500 team, have a chance to square away their record, and just lay an egg? Yeah, it would be. Give me Tennessee in a rare game that they should be up for, a Monday night home game. Lay the short number with Tennessee. This will be it for the Jets.
Interesting call there. We'll see how that one goes. I gave the first of my 3 locks earlier by mistake. Meant to hold them for the end, but I wasn't paying close enough attention. One of the 3 is Atlanta, laying 1.5 against the Giants. Next up here in this scenario, Houston is playing Indianapolis at home. The Texans are laying 8 here. Had been 9.5 earlier in the week. It seems like, again, Joe Public seems to think that the line is a little bit inflated based on the way that the Texans went last week, and Joe Public seems to be betting accordingly. I always like to go the other way. This is another one of my patented Why Ask Why specials, and that's why it's a big 3 pick this week. I don't understand why the number was so high, but why ask why? The wise guys are always right. If the wise guys think it should be a big line, then it should be. I say Texans -8.
I'm staying away from this one, but I agree with your rationale completely. The Colts may have gone from underrated to overrated within the span of like 3 weeks. Look, you talk about the wise guys, they have not liked the Colts all year. Believe it or not, I think the Colts are going to have trouble matching this year's win total next season. They have beaten a lot of bad teams close this season, which is never a good sign. They're going to be in the playoffs. They're the team I think you're going to want to play. Either a Denver or Baltimore is going to want to draw in that wild card round. I just don't. But Houston, God, was that embarrassing on Monday night. They'll win. They'll bounce back. You know me. I would like to play against the previous week's results, but I don't know if they can cover that spread.
Yeah, that's clearly what Joe Public thinks. We're almost out of time, but we got my lock pick here for the last one of the week. 7-6 Steelers at the 7-6 Cowboys. A playoff elimination battle veritably here at Cowboy Stadium, Arlington, Texas. Nance and Sims on the call. The Steelers have gone from this game being a pick'em to the Steelers now being a 2-point favorite as it stands. I'm on the Squealers in this one, and everybody knows how much I hate them personally. But again, who's more legit between these two teams? Who's an actual playoff team and who's not? There's no doubt in my mind it's Pittsburgh. That's my lock pick of the week.
Cowboys have not covered a home game all year. I don't think they've ever won 3 in a row under Garrett. The 5th of my 5 recommended plays is the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team that is just bizarre. This is a team that went into Baltimore and won with Chaz Batch, yet has suffered losses at home to San Diego, to Cleveland they lost, and they also lost to Oakland.
Right.
Explain that. Pittsburgh is much better than their record. I know this is the wrong week to make that case. You probably laughed when they laid the egg against San Diego last week after I made the case they were better than their record. But trust me, given the pedigree of these two teams, Pittsburgh's going to go into Dallas and TCB, which stands for take care of business.
It's my lock pick. My other big 3 picks, Houston and Atlanta. Your other picks, recommended picks this week, aside from this one, Chicago, Baltimore, Tennessee, and who am I forgetting here?
Atlanta. We agree on two. We agree on two. Both Atlanta and Pittsburgh. Look out. Almost final Atlanta and Pittsburgh this week.
Almost unprecedented terrain. We'll see what happens when we reconvene next week. Thanks very much, my friend.
Talk to you later, Ricky.
As we bring the show to a close, we would like to extend our deepest gratitude to NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, all Clear Channel affiliates, TNT, TBS, USA, UPN, Deadspin.com, YouTube.com, YTMND.com, MySpace.com, various blogs, Fox News, CNN, CNBC, MSNBC, IamBoard.com, Billboard.com, Google.com, ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN News, ESPN Classic, NBA TV, NFL Network, Sports Time Ohio, Athlon Magazine, Comedy Central, Cartoon Network, The Boomerang Channel, QVC, BET, The Spice Channel, Steno Notebooks, Manwich, Papermate Office Supplies, waitresses, strippers, bartenders, garbage men, janitors, microwave popcorn, the writers of The Office, Scrubs, Entourage, My Name is Earl, Oz, Metalocalypse and the Boondocks, Aquafina, and the Periodic Table of Elements.